There we go. All right. So once again, welcome everybody. Jesse Crosscrawl from the Departments of Health and Human Services, joined by some real experts in this field that you'll hear from today, including Lisa Gomez, the Assistant Secretary for Employee Benefit Security Administration at the Department of Labor, Ellen Montz, Deputy Administrator and Director of the Center for Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight at HHS, Rachel Pryor, who is a counselor to Secretary Becerra at the Department of Health and Human Services, Amber Rivers, Director of Health Plan Standards and Compliance Assistance at the Department of Labor, and Dan Seid, Deputy Administrator and Director of the Center for Medicaid and CHIP Services at HHS. So with that, we'll stop the sort of run of show stuff, and I will turn it over to Assistant Secretary Gomez.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I want to first thank Jesse for starting things off, and also thank our colleagues at CMS, HHS, and Commerce for collaborating with us to organize today's call and for their general cooperation in working together to address the important issues that we are going to speak about. My name is Lisa Gomez. I am the Assistant Secretary for Employee Benefit Security in the Department of Labor. We're pleased to be joined today by my colleague, Amber Rivers, the Director of our Office of Health Plan Standards and Compliance Assistance. The Employee Benefit Security Administration, or EBSA, ABSA, is an agency within the Department of Labor that oversees the over 2.5 million employment-based group health plans in this country that are available to America's workers through their employment with private employers. An estimated 133 million Americans have coverage through health plans that EBSA oversees, including both workers and their families. As our colleagues from HHS and CMS will explain, millions of Americans are imminently at risk for losing health coverage due to the unwinding of Medicaid continuous coverage. Many of these individuals are members of underserved communities, and they all need our help. Sponsors of private employment-based health plans need to play their part in this process to help ensure that any of their employees or their family members who will lose Medicaid coverage due to the unwinding and who may be eligible for health coverage through their employment understand their rights and options. Sponsors also need to understand their responsibilities in allowing eligible individuals to enroll in their workplace-based plans and to provide flexibilities and assistance to those individuals so that they can enroll in health coverage through their employment if it is available to them. Your participation in today's call is super encouraging because it indicates to us your willingness to learn more about this issue and to work with us to be part of the solution. So thank you for joining. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Pryor of HHS to provide some background on the unwinding of Medicaid continuous coverage and an overview of the administration's strategy for dealing with it.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Pryor, and I'm counselor to Secretary Becerra. In that role, I work with our CMS colleagues who are going to talk next, and our White House on advancing strategic priority initiatives across the Department of HHS. One of those initiatives is the Medicaid unwinding of the continuous coverage requirement. So we're thrilled actually to see the wide participation on this call because we are here to ask for your help and your support as we start the process of redetermining more than 90 million Medicaid beneficiaries. I think as a lot of folks are aware, the COVID legislation that was passed in 2020 gave states an enhanced matching rate or enhanced funds beyond what they normally receive for coverage to keep people covered during for the length of the COVID-19 public health emergency. In December, Congress delinked the end of the Medicaid PHE. So while the PHE we've indicated will end on May 11th, states were allowed to start redetermining folks and terminating coverage for folks that are no longer eligible as of April 1st. States are doing this on a different time frame, which I think our Medicaid Director Dan Tsai is going to talk about a little bit more next. But the key point that I really want to leave you here with today is that our estimates are, based on historical data and churn in the program, that 15 million Medicaid beneficiaries may no longer be eligible for coverage, or if they are eligible, maybe losing coverage for procedural reasons. And 4 million of that 15 million are likely now eligible for employer-sponsored coverage. So while we can do a lot on our end to try and make the transition to marketplace coverage as seamless as possible, to try to do all that we can to help Medicaid beneficiaries have their information updated so that they don't lose coverage if they're otherwise eligible for Medicaid due to procedural reasons. The area where we really need your help is that transition to employer-sponsored coverage. We are hopeful that through sort of today, that this is our first of many engagements as we learn from you what you need from us to be able to give folks the information that they need, to give the folks that you represent the information that they need about the unwinding, so that as folks are coming off of Medicaid, if they're eligible for employer-sponsored coverage, we can get them enrolled seamlessly. So we're sort of taking all feedback here in addition to asking for your help. It really is going to take all of us to keep people covered. I think it is a priority for all of us on this call to keep people covered. And so we are looking for you to tell us what you need to do that. And we are excited to partner with you, excited to partner with our colleagues. I want to say a very big thank you to our Department of Labor, Department of Commerce colleagues for joining us in this effort. Keeping people covered through this Medicaid unwinding is really a huge whole of government priority. And we are working hard with our government partners outside the department, with all of our agencies within the department to do all that we can to make that happen. With that, I'm going to kick it over to my CMS leaders that are on the phone, our Medicaid Director, Dan Tsai, and our CISIO Director, Dr. Ellen Montz. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And I'll kick it off here. And I see some questions already in the chat that we can touch on between Ellen and myself and others. And just to note, several of us, many of us on this call on the HHS CMS side, prior to these rules came from the states as well on the ground. I was the Medicaid director in Massachusetts, and I remember spending, Rachel and Ellen were also in Virginia Medicaid. I remember spending a lot of time in my former role really thinking with the business community, employers, chambers of commerce, all the nuanced interactions of healthcare coverage between Medicaid and the marketplace. So there's a lot of context coming into this, obviously. I think Rachel noted the overall context, and I hope folks are all aware that the Medicaid redetermination process has begun and is about to, for a number of states, get into full swing. And as Rachel noted, those timelines and a lot of the requirements really have been dictated by Congress from a statutory standpoint. And so over a 12-month period, all states will be redetermining the equivalent of 92 million people, which is the single largest coverage shift in redetermination we've seen in the country anytime as of recent memory. And we are really trying to do everything possible to make this as smooth as possible. We want people eligible for Medicaid to remain covered in Medicaid. Folks that are not eligible for Medicaid, we want to make sure they can smoothly get over to other coverage options. We expect a few million of those will be eligible for no cost to low premium plans on the marketplace. And so there's an incredible amount of work that we, CMS and other parts of the federal government are doing to help that transition. And we expect a few million people will be eligible for employer-sponsored coverage. And so part of the message here, which we'll throw up a slide on for some specific asks later on as well, is to really what you need from us and how we can partner together to make sure those transitions can be as smooth as possible, including thinking about where plan sponsors, I know there's some from the broker community and others, can really help around getting folks to the no premium, very low cost marketplace plans for those that are losing Medicaid coverage, but eligible for employer sponsored coverage to really make sure that there is flexibility in the timelines, documentation, everything to help accommodate that. We know not everyone that loses Medicaid coverage will even be aware that they've lost Medicaid coverage. If they've moved 3 times since the beginning of the pandemic, the state may be trying to reach out to them. They may get a renewal notice. They may miss that. They may get a notice that they miss because they moved that tells them they're not eligible for Medicaid, and they won't actually know that until they show up at a provider. And so some of those 60-day timeframes about being able to elect coverage, that's going to be challenging. And so we're asking for folks to be able to lean in from a plan sponsor standpoint and provide some flexibility there. And just overall simple messaging to across the whole community here, which is to individuals that are enrolled or potentially enrolled in Medicaid, update your contact information, since that is the best way to have an orderly transition and to be aware that this is happening. So this is a tremendous priority. And I think also I would say from that, we have partnered very closely with the health plans at the federal leadership level and with a number of local plan organizations as well to really help support this. We want as seamless a transition as possible. So from the federal standpoint, we have tried to clarify that there are few, if any, barriers for health plans to be able to help support direct outreach to individuals, and including for plans that have both the Medicaid business and commercial, whether that be marketplace or et cetera, to really help catch folks and make sure they get connected to coverage. I would acknowledge that different states have different state level requirements as well that are beyond the federal requirements. So that seamlessness of what plans can do to engage it may be different in different states depending on individual state policy decisions. But the health plans have indicated great, obviously, desire to help people keep people covered both on Medicaid and in various marketplace and commercial forms of insurance. And so we're hopeful that is helpful to you all as well. So maybe there's all sorts of detail we could go into, but those are some of the top line messages. We are deeply grateful that you all are engaged on this. We know Medicaid coverage is a huge part of your local environments, and this is a really important piece for maintaining coverage. I'm going to turn it to Ellen Muntz, a colleague who's the director of CSIO, to give some remarks as well. And maybe I already see questions flowing in, Jesse, so it sounds like we'll have many things to talk through.
Thanks, Dan, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And as Dan just mentioned, I think we'll try and get to a few questions after I speak. As Dan said, I am Ellen Muntz. I'm the director of CSIO, which is not a very descriptive name, but just for those who are not aware, at CSIO, we run the federal marketplace, healthcare.gov, and we regulate state-based marketplaces, the individual insurance, health insurance market, and in partnership with my colleagues at Labor and Treasury, the group health insurance market. And for over the past year, we have placed a priority focus on improving transitions, coverage transitions from Medicaid and CHIP to the marketplace. As we've looked toward the restart, which has recently begun, the restart of Medicaid and CHIP redeterminations for the first time in over 3 years. In following that work, we are more equipped than ever before to help folks who are no longer eligible for Medicaid and CHIP make that transition to the marketplace. That said, that process remains far from seamless. And we know from estimates and past experience that people will unfortunately lose coverage or find themselves facing a gap in coverage. And we need to minimize that number of people. We've been working tirelessly across the government to minimize the few people as humanly possible to experience a gap in coverage. And you all are a large part in helping us achieve our efforts. a few words on kind of the marketplace and what we've been up to improve transitions. First, as you all have seen, we have the most affordable coverage we've ever had on the marketplace, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. We have a good landing spot for folks who are no longer eligible for Medicaid and CHIP. Secondly, we've made policy and system changes to help make that transition for folks who are no longer eligible as seamless as possible. Most notably, we announced for the federal marketplace for healthcare.gov a new special enrollment period during this kind of 12 to 15 month process of the unwinding of Medicaid redeterminations. We announced a new special enrollment period. We normally have the same special enrollment period you all as employers do for loss of qualifying coverage, the 60 days before and 60 days after. But we put out some guidance several weeks ago announcing a new special enrollment period for this period of time, in which any individual losing Medicaid and CHIP coverage or no longer eligible for Medicaid and CHIP during this time period have all the way until the end of the redetermination period of this unwinding period to sign up for marketplace coverage. This is a long period of time, and we would not, under normal circumstances, make this move, but these are extraordinary circumstances, and we hope that you all can reflect those extraordinary circumstances, just as we have in your opening up of your special enrollment periods for your employees as they transition potentially over from Medicaid and CHIP to your employer coverage. Third, we've really focused on outreach and education. So you will see from the federal government a large marketing advertising campaign, kind of similar to what you see during open enrollment, helping educate folks on how they can remain in coverage if it's Medicaid or CHIP, or make that coverage transition to marketplace coverage or employer coverage if they're eligible. And we're doing some, as Dan mentioned, some kind of targeted direct outreach to individuals who have lost Medicaid and CHIP in order to help make those transitions over to new coverage, including marketplace. But we are also trying to equip our enrollment assisters with more information about how they can help individuals talk to their employers about whether or not they're eligible for coverage. So would ask for your help in these situations. And fourth, we're really focused on our partnerships. I truly think that having these partnerships, particularly with you all, our employer community, will make all the difference in helping individuals find their spots, find their coverage wherever they are eligible. And so you all, as employers, in my mind, can do two really important things. One, educate your employees about what is going on. Many of them may remain eligible for Medicaid. Tell them to update their contact information. Many will be eligible for your own coverage if they lose that eligibility. So what I would ask you all to really communicate with your employees about how they get on to that coverage if they lose Medicaid and CHIP. Or if you are not offering coverage, give your employees kind of information about the marketplace, and we'll have some materials to pass around there. And the final thing is I'll just kind of focus on, just a reminder, we have broadened our special enrollment period on the marketplace, but it remains the case that individuals are not eligible for premium tax credits on healthcare.gov or state-based marketplaces if they have an affordable offer of employer coverage. And that is whether or not they are currently within an open enrollment period or a special enrollment period. And so if employees miss out on their opportunity to enroll in employer coverage, that doesn't then make them eligible for the marketplace coverage. So you all really do have a lot of flexibility and power within your hands to make sure that you're allowing your employees to come onto their plans to your plans as they are no longer eligible for Medicaid and CHIP. So thank you for your partnership. I'm really looking forward to answering your questions, but also hearing how we can better help you all and equip you all to help your employees. I think I'm turning it back to Jesse. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Dan. So have a few questions in the chat that we'll get to now. Kind of going to answer the ones that are real specific to what Ellen and Dan walked through, because next we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the roles and for employers in all of this. So one question that came in was around the special enrollment period that was announced, and just clarifying on how long it's going to last. And just noting that Joanna from our team noted that this unwinding special enrollment period will last through July 31st, 2024. There's also a question on just like flyers, other materials. In a little bit, we're going to walk through some of the materials we've put together just in general around the redeterminations process, and then also specifically for employers. All right. One thing, so a couple questions that popped up to me, and I think Ellen, this will be in your wheelhouse. So one question was, during the special enrollment period, will there be retroactive coverage for folks to avoid gaps in coverage?
So on the federal marketplace, there will not be. There are a few state-based marketplaces that are providing retroactive coverage. I believe New Mexico is one of them, and there may be a few others. I will say, because there is not retroactive coverage on the marketplace back to the loss of coverage date, we are really focused on, helping individuals, from the moment they get a notice that says, you're losing Medicaid and CHIP coverage, in however many weeks or by the end of the month, that they come immediately into the marketplace and sign up for coverage, or immediately to their employer to sign up for coverage, to help ensure that even if there is a gap in coverage, it's as limited as possible. And so in an ideal situation, you are coming in and signing up before you lose coverage, so that the coverage can be effective when Medicaid and CHIP coverage is lost. But we want to limit that gap as much as humanly possible. And I think those efforts can be really bolstered by communication and education.
And then the next question, I think, again, for you, Ellen, earlier you mentioned that folks are not eligible for marketplace coverage if they have an affordable offer of employer coverage. And so there's a question around the family glitch. So obviously sort of a complex thing to explain, but if you can take a stab at boiling that down and how the family glitch or the lack of family glitch will play into redeterminations.
I am quite thankful and happy that this administration moved forward with a rule late last year that eliminated the so-called family glitch. That really helps with our posture in unwinding and the tools that we have available to us. So now it is the case that if an employer offers affordable coverage to their employee, but does not offer affordable coverage to that employee's dependents, that those dependents are able to go to the marketplace and receive premium tax credits for coverage. And so that is, I think, for, there are some kind of employer profiles, often kind of small employers, but others that do kind of make that offer of affordable coverage to the employee. And now we have an opportunity that if it's not made to their dependents, that those individuals can go and get quality affordable coverage through the marketplace. I think it absolute strategy in the toolkit, particularly for employers as they communicate with their employees and their family members.
Great, thank you. And I do acknowledge that I see there's other questions in the chat. We will return to a number of them. And we do have more time set aside later on for a more robust Q&A. But right now wanted to bring back in Assistant Secretary Gomez and Rachel to talk a little bit about the role of employers in all of this.
Thanks, Jesse. So for those of you on the call who represent or work with private employers or other entities that sponsor employment-based health plans, and I've seen the registration list, so I'm happy that there's lots of you on the call. As I said earlier in my remarks, we need your partnership to work through the unwinding as it relates to employees and their families. As other folks have noted on the call, this is just really a big change, and we're kind of all hands on deck here within the government, and asking all stakeholders to partner with us in these efforts. On March 29th, the Tri-Departments issued FAQ Part 58, which related to several issues involving health coverage and the end of the COVID-19 national emergency and the public health emergency. They are available on the EBSA website, and I think they may be circulated after this call if they weren't circulated previously. But one of the FAQs in that guidance relates to special enrollment in group health care coverage, group health plan coverage after loss of eligibility for Medicare or CHIP coverage. As we noted in those FAQs, group health plans and health insurance issuers that provide group health coverage are required under the law to provide a special enrollment opportunity to employees and their dependents who previously declined the employer or workplace-based health coverage when it was offered because they had other types of coverage, and that would include.
Can you call Steve? He's the one that
If we could, folks could view, thank you. And they declined the other coverage because they had eligibility for CHIP or Medicaid. Therefore, employment-based, workplace-based plans are required to offer a special enrollment period to their employees if they were otherwise eligible to enroll under the workplace plan and are now losing eligibility for the state Medicaid or CHIP coverage. In addition, if an employee or their dependent becomes eligible for state premium assistance under Medicaid or CHIP for group health plan coverage, the employer or other sponsor of workplace-based coverage has to offer that employee and their dependents a special enrollment opportunity for the plan. Employees and their dependents would be eligible for special enrollment in a group health plan. If they meet certain requirements, they have to be otherwise eligible to enroll in the workplace-based plan. The employee or the dependent had to have been enrolled in Medicaid or CHIP coverage, and that Medicaid or CHIP coverage was terminated because of the loss of eligibility for that coverage. So usually if you have an employee or dependent who is losing coverage before because their Medicaid or CHIP coverage is terminating, they have to request coverage under their workplace-based group health plan within 60 days after the termination of the other coverage. However, under emergency relief notices that were previously issued by the Tri-Department or by, the Department of Labor, Treasury, and the IRS, individuals who lose Medicaid or CHIP coverage between March 31st of 2023 through July 10th of 2023, which is the date that the Tri-Departments announced to be the end of the outbreak period. Those employees and their families have 60 days from July 10th, 2023, which is again the end of the outbreak period, to request special enrollment in a group health plan that is governed by ERISA. So all that being said, as we said in the FAQs, there's nothing under the Internal Revenue Code or under ERISA that would prevent a group health plan from allowing for a longer special enrollment period than that what is required by law for employees, participants, or their family members to enroll in the plan after their Medicaid or CHIP coverage terminates. And just given the extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in with this sort of unprecedented change in coverage, with millions and millions of individuals who are about to lose their coverage, and just anticipating the confusion and anxiety that is going to be associated with the loss of coverage, and with folks trying to understand exactly what's happening and what their options are, we are encouraging employers and other sponsors of these workplace-based plans to be flexible with these deadlines and to work with the entities that administer the employees' coverage to extend the special enrollment period past what is legally required. So another thing that we are asking is that employers and employee representatives make sure that benefit staff and representatives who assist employees with respect to health coverage are aware of the unwinding of Medicare, Medicaid coverage, and all of the deadlines and challenges and issues that we've been talking about today. Employers can also encourage their employees who are currently enrolled in Medicaid or CHIP coverage to make sure that they have updated contact information with the state Medicaid and CHIP agencies so that they can receive all of the relevant information that they need and be able to respond to any communications they may receive from the state. And employers and plan sponsors also need to work to make sure that employees and participants are aware of the special enrollment opportunities that we've discussed. To try to help in that process, at EBSA, we developed a flyer that I put in the chat that can be used to share with employees and participants to help them understand what's coming and what their options are. At the end of the day, we're really mainly asking employers and sponsors of these workplace-based health plans to be aware of the issues and educate employees that will be affected and be flexible with deadlines as the employees work through this really massive transition. And if there are any questions along the way, we here at EBSA are definitely here to help provide compliance assistance if you want to reach out to our national office or call our 1-800 number, 1-800-ASK-EBSA. So thanks for your attention and assistance today.
Thank you. Rachel, anything to add on to that?
So I will just say that I see a ton of questions coming into the chat. I think they are incredibly good questions. And so I want to ask our team to please take those questions back and let's figure out a way that we can get these questions, the answers to those questions out to this group. I also think we've gotten some good feedback on what you all need, whether it's templates for letters or what have you. So please, the only thing I will add is to keep that coming, because as much as we're asking for you to help us make sure that these people have a seamless entrance into your coverage, we also are prepared to do everything that we can to support you and make sure that you have what you need. So the only thing I will add on to what's already been said is just to our team to make sure that we have a record of all of these great questions and have a process for getting our answers to you, and for you all to be very vocal with us about what we need to support you with, because we do, this is a top priority. I want to reiterate again, this is a top priority. And people are eligible for coverage. They're eligible for health insurance, and it is not good for anyone if they don't have it. So we need to make sure that we do everything we can collectively to ensure that people are in whatever coverage is the right coverage for them. I will stop there and kick it back over to you, Jesse.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And I'm going to actually call in Perry Briskin from CMCS to walk through just a slide that they put together around employer actions.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Dan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think this is not dissimilar to what I mentioned before, and many of you have already been thinking about this. On the plan sponsor action side, I think we're explicitly just encouraging folks to offer flexibility, including beyond that 60 days, which you just heard colleagues comment on, to be as flexible as possible in how to support folks who have lost coverage in enrolling in employer sponsored coverage or a range of other things. And also, and this is not unrelated to the family glitch discussion, but just to think about, there are going to be a whole range of different situations between individuals and their dependents who might lose coverage on different dates, or there are differences in how people think about starting points of coverage, but to offer flexibility in a range of situations there. We mentioned also getting the word out, encouraging folks to update their contact information. And there's a link to a toolkit here. I think we would also be interested in any feedback Assistant Secretary Gomez put in the chat, and Jesse, I'm sure, will compile all of us to send out a flyer that our federal partners have put together that is educational for folks on the unwinding, and it encourages folks to update contact information, for example. Any feedback for us on that, or what types of materials would be more or less helpful to the existing materials kind of solve it? Are there other things that need to be clarified? That would be very helpful as we think about additional collateral to produce or to help partner with folks around. And then the last piece is also, obviously, there are a number of employers who either don't offer ESI, or there is the family glitch piece that Ellen described, where dependents will have access to coverage for a whole range of reasons. We really want to encourage you all as plan sponsors, employers, brokers, others supporting the community to help get people to the marketplace as well. So I don't think anything in these three are things that we haven't discussed already on the call, but I think it would be helpful to hear if this does represent kind of where you all in the community are. Are there other things that you all are thinking of doing, actions that you're taking that aren't called out here that you want to make sure we're aware of, and that we can help explicitly support, or you need some explicit flexibility as well? And so Jesse and Ellen, and this is I'm continuing to see some, and Danielle's comments about just whether or not the enrollment flexibility is possible or not. And so I don't know if it makes sense to continue to pause on that for a sec. I'm assuming the question is around the 60 days. Danielle, is that right? Okay. I think our colleagues at DOL just opined on that a little bit, where there is some flexibility, but I think to the extent folks are not seeing that, that's important for us to help clarify. But either colleagues at Labor or Ellen for Socio, anything you want to comment on that?
Sorry.
Hi.
Is that you?
Okay, Amber.
Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Yes, I did want to clarify a couple of things related to what time frame should be made available to individuals. As Lisa highlighted, we did issue FAQs Part 58 that address a number of the flexibilities that we provided during the public health emergency. And as part of that, the Department of Labor, as well as Department of Treasury and the IRS, we provided some flexibility with certain timeframes that apply under ERISA and the code. One of those of note is the special enrollment timeframe, that time period to elect, which was correctly noted as 60 days generally for those who lose Medicaid and CHIP coverage. We did clarify in that set of FAQs that employers should essentially allow individuals who lose eligibility for Medicaid and CHIP after March 31st, up until the end of that extension period, they should allow them the flexibility. So while normally it would be 60 days, what we've said in that FAQ is they'll have at least until July 10th to have that ability to elect Medicaid, to elect special enrollment into the employer group plan. I know there have been some questions about whether or not the end of the national emergency that President Biden has signed into the joint resolution applies or impacts the information that was included in the FAQs. I do want to clarify that that does not impact that July 10th date that we included in the FAQs. What we had said was that the timeframes should be extended until either 60 days after the announced end of the national emergency or another date announced by the departments. And so the date that we announced in FAQs Part 58, that July 10th date, continues to be the end of the outbreak period. So employers should continue to make sure that individuals have that full time frame to elect special enrollment into their plan.
And can I ask, I see in a chat in from Amber that carriers and TPAs, even if a plan sponsor / employer wants to be flexible, given what Amber just described, can you just, because we're chatting with the health plans all the time, are you noting that even if the plan sponsor wants to be flexible, following some of the DOL guidance, that the other Amber Edwards, sorry, not Amber, I'm looking at the chat, Amber Edwards.
Hi, yeah, sorry. Yep, my name is Amber. I work with insurance broker, and yeah, we get a lot of communications from the carriers, and they are putting out information. And I think part of the issue might be that they are sticking to those hard and fast timelines. So yeah, even though you might tell an employer, hey, you can allow extra time, that doesn't necessarily mean that their insurance company is going to allow that. And I think that might be an issue.
And feel free to connect with us offline. But again, this relief was not just provided to plans, it's for participants as well. And so I think the encouragement is going beyond the outbreak period, but individuals are entitled to rely on the flexibility that the Department of Labor and Treasury and IRS have provided. So if there are, if there are issues where the service provider is not actually administering the plan in accordance with that, let us know and we'll see how we can assist here. But really, this has been in place for some time, and I think it's very important to us that plans and their service providers are providing this flexibility.
And I think this is a great reason for this sort of discussion. In partnership from a federal standpoint together, we have regular engagement with all of the plan associations at a federal level. We will also raise this collectively to make sure there's both clarity around the policy, what folks are entitled to the flexibility, but also some messaging to individual carriers that we are, as an administration, we're looking for folks to all very much jump in to support what Amber Rivers, the other Amber, described. So thank Amber Edwards, and Danielle, thank you for flagging that.
And I think if I could just add on to that, to add on what both Amber said as well as Dan, but there are some flexibilities, as Amber mentioned, that are required, that we had previously announced as part of COVID relief. There are other flexibilities on top of that we are encouraging employers and plans and TPAs and everyone involved to consider under this, under these circumstances, to the extent to which you are finding that the carriers or the TPAs may not, understand or may not be being flexible. Definitely take Amber Rivers up on the invitation to reach out to us, because if there's some confusion out there about what's required and then what on top of that we are asking for as far as flexibilities, we want to make sure that we're addressing, any confusion there, and that employees are at minimum getting what they're required to receive as far as that additional time.
I see Garrett has his hand raised. Garrett, if you wouldn't mind just telling us which organization you're from, but then go ahead and ask your question.
Sure, I'm with the Business Group on Health here in DC, and thank you very much. I wasn't sure if we were doing verbal, but appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you to the departments for holding the call and for the guidance over the last few months. I know many of us on this call have been engaging with our members for a year or more, saying remaining vigilant that this day was coming and this transition was coming. So, in particular, representing large employer plan sponsors who are primarily self-insured, we appreciated FAQ 58. And I know, Amber, you just referred to, focusing on the announcement of July 10th in FAQ 58 as the end of the outbreak period versus the measure of the end of the national emergency plus 60 days, which, relates back to the original 2020 notices. If the departments could issue even just a short statement of some sort very quickly, I think that would be really appreciated by the employer community. I've heard, a number of members thinking, and lots of consultants out there thinking in the last 48 hours that the end of the outbreak period will be June 9th. And so there's going to be a lot of confusion. And to the extent, I just want to encourage the departments to put out something publicly short and sweet with that view, if that it will remain. And I'm going to be very specific, the end of the day on July 10th, right? It's through July 10th.
Thank you for that, Gary. If we are aware that, something is needed that's more formal so folks can rely on it. And we're definitely making sure that we work to make sure plans don't unnecessarily unwind these flexibilities prematurely. So thank you for flagging that.
So we're getting close to the top of the hour. Any other questions? You can either put in the chat or raise your hand.
This is Danielle Capilla. Sorry, I've been active in the chat, but I'm with a broker. I lead a national compliance team, and I cannot stress enough that if the agencies do not give a specified extended time frame for that flexibility, every carrier, TPA, and employer will make a different decision as to what that flexibility means. And it will be very disparate, and you will have neighbors living across the street from each other, and one employer/carrier combination will give all the flexibility in the world, and the other one will not. And I understand the intention of the FAQ and the question 6 in part 58, but absent a specific date time frame, that will be interpreted wildly differently across the country and even within local communities. And it just feels like chaos about to rain down, if I'm being honest. So just sharing that formal guidance on the time frame would be so welcome, because then everyone can follow the same definition.
I want to just reiterate that that the FAQ part 58, the information in there is the formal guidance, and we simply, while we would like to have authority to give, require plans to do lots of different things, we are limited here as far as what can be required. So if you look at that part 58, that is the formal guidance that sets forth the flexibility that we are allowed to require. As far as what on top of that, additional flexibilities that can be offered, all that we can do, at least from the Department of Labor standpoint, is encourage that. So, there's not much more that we can do with respect to formal guidance. We can discuss internally the issue of the end of the outbreak period and what we can provide as far as further clarification on that. But I think that this is pretty much as far as we can go. And I would just, strongly encourage that you make sure that folks that you're dealing with are aware of that guidance that was put out.
I think maybe one thing I'd suggest, thanks Lisa and Amber for clarifying that, and also for folks raising the various points in the chat. I think there are two related things here that I think we can take that we're flagging and taking back. There are certain things that the federal government can or can't require based on their statutory authority, and DOL has taken a very clear look at that. And so, as Lisa's saying, the FAQs kind of outline where the department feels there's statutory authority to make certain requirements. As I noted, we CMS, in partnership with our DOL and other colleagues, we are meeting extremely frequently with the plan trades and associations. We have an opportunity to make a very specific encouragement and ask for people to do it consistently. It doesn't give us a statutory or regulatory authority to tell folks they have to, and if folks ignore us, there's no statutory lever we have to call in a plan around that. But it doesn't mean we can't press and push from a CMS standpoint in our discussions, and to ask the national trades, health plan and carrier associations to also push and ask the state level and local level folks around that. So I hear the point that folks are practically raising, which is very well taken. I think let us take that back and also try to engage the carriers, recognizing that we're just calling it, there's statutory limitations to what we can require, but it doesn't mean we can't push. And so we will have those discussions. So thanks for raising that.
All right, thanks, Dan. So we are about at time. Really appreciate this discussion. And you all have given us a lot to chew on, and we appreciate that. So just a few words in closing. I sent around some materials yesterday before the call. I will re-up those along with some other materials we've discussed. Would draw your attention to the webpage that CMS has put up, medicaid.gov/unwinding. That is where you can find all the information, toolkits, flyers, guidance, everything that CMS has produced around the unwinding can be found there. It's updated frequently with new information. There's also within there a speaker's request form. So we are eager to speak with large groups around unwinding. So if you have, if this conversation sparks like we'd love for somebody from the administration to speak with our group or to a conference or something like that, we just ask that you go through that form, which can be found on medicaid.gov/unwinding. So again, we'll share all this over email afterward. But just in closing, just wanted to thank you all for your participation and for your partnership on this work going forward. Thank you.